In recent history, few criminal cases have captured global attention quite like the story of Jeffrey Epstein. A man who once moved among billionaires, politicians, and royalty later became the center of one of the most disturbing criminal investigations of the 21st century. This is not just the story of a single individual. It is a story about power, influence, and questions that still remain unanswered. According to publicly available reports, court documents, and investigative journalism, the Epstein case revealed a complex network of relationships, financial dealings, and allegations that stretched across continents. And even today, years later, people continue to ask, how did this happen? Who knew? And how was it allowed to continue for so long? Jeffrey Epstein was born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1953. He grew up in a modest environment, far removed from the world of private jets, luxury estates, and elite social circles he would later become associated with. In the 1970s, Epstein began his career in education, working as a teacher despite lacking a formal college degree. Soon after, he transitioned into finance. This move would change everything. Through connections and business relationships, Epstein entered the world of high-level investing and wealth management. He became known as a private financier, someone who managed the money of extremely wealthy clients. But unlike traditional financial firms, Epstein's operations were often described as secretive and highly exclusive. Little was publicly known about the exact nature of his financial activities, yet his lifestyle suggested enormous wealth, private jets, multiple properties, connections to some of the most influential people in the world. Over time, Epstein developed relationships with politicians, business leaders, academics, and celebrities. Photographs, public appearances, and documented visits showed him interacting with high-profile individuals across various industries. These connections later became a major focus of public attention. Investigators and journalists began asking difficult questions. Were these relationships purely social, or were they part of something more complex? While many individuals later distanced themselves from Epstein, his ability to move within elite circles raised serious concerns about access, influence, and accountability. In the early 2000s, allegations began to emerge involving inappropriate relationships with underage girls. Local law enforcement in Florida launched investigations. Victims described recruitment patterns, financial incentives, and a network that allegedly facilitated these encounters. According to reports at the time, multiple individuals came forward with testimonies. But the legal process became complicated. In 2008, Epstein entered into a controversial plea agreement. He pleaded guilty to state charges and served a relatively short sentence. This agreement later faced heavy criticism. Many questioned why federal charges were avoided, why the sentence was considered unusually lenient, and how such a case was handled behind closed doors. The plea deal would later become a central issue in discussions about the justice system and institutional accountability. After his release, Epstein returned to his properties and social network. Despite being a registered sex offender, he continued to travel and maintain connections. Journalists and investigative reporters continued digging into the case. Over time, new information surfaced. Documents, flight records, testimonies. The story did not disappear. In fact, it began gaining momentum again. Years later, federal authorities reopened the case. New allegations emerged, along with claims that earlier investigations had not gone far enough. According to prosecutors, the scope of Epstein's activities appeared larger and more organized than previously understood. Victims described patterns of behavior that stretched over years. Some claimed recruitment networks. Others spoke about intimidation and silence. The narrative shifted from a single criminal case to something far broader. A system, a structure, a network of influence. In July 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on federal charges related to sex trafficking. The case immediately became global news. Media coverage exploded. Public reaction was intense. Questions resurfaced about previous investigations, past legal agreements, and the extent of Epstein's connections. This time, the stakes were different. Federal prosecutors indicated they intended to pursue the case fully. The legal process had only just begun. In August 2019, Jeffrey Epstein died while in federal custody. Officials reported that his death was ruled a suicide. However, the circumstances quickly drew widespread attention. Security failures, camera malfunctions, guard errors. These details fueled public debate. Many people questioned how such an event could occur in a high-security facility. Investigations later identified procedural failures and staff negligence. Yet for many observers, unanswered questions remained. The aftermath of Epstein's death triggered a wave of reactions across the world. Some saw it as the end of a criminal case. Others viewed it as the beginning of a larger conversation. Victims demanded accountability. Journalists pursued new leads. Governments faced pressure to examine institutional failures. And the public continued asking, would the full truth ever be known? Attention shifted toward individuals connected to Epstein. Associates, employees, and collaborators came under scrutiny. One of the most significant developments was the prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell, a longtime associate. Her trial introduced new testimony, documents, and insights into how the alleged network functioned. The case suggested organization, coordination, and a structured system of recruitment. Again, the story expanded beyond a single individual. Investigative journalists played a major role in keeping the story alive. Reports uncovered financial transactions, property records, and previously undisclosed relationships. Documentaries and books explored different aspects of the case. Each new revelation added pieces to a puzzle that remained incomplete. Even today, researchers and reporters continue examining what happened. Despite years of investigation, many questions remain. How extensive was the network? Who enabled it? What failures allowed it to continue? And how can similar situations be prevented in the future? The Epstein case became more than a criminal investigation. It became a symbol of systemic failure, of power without accountability, and of the vulnerability of those without protection. The story is disturbing, complex, and deeply unsettling. It challenges assumptions about justice, influence, and the structures that govern society. It forces uncomfortable questions. And it reminds us that sometimes, the most important truths are the hardest to uncover. This case is not just about one man. It is about the systems that allowed him to operate, and the responsibility to ensure that such failures are never repeated. Because even after investigations, trials, and global attention, some stories never truly end. They remain unanswered.